These kind of moments that once seemed like an occasional inconvenience began to settle into Azena's life with a permanence she could no longer ignore. In one of the quiet hours when Sultan was away or occupied, her thoughts drifted back to the years she had spent with Musa, and to the simple companionship she had once taken for granted. It was during one such lonely evenings that she found herself wondering how Musa was doing, whether life had been kind to him, and whether he had ever found the happiness she had once believed she was leaving behind. The curiosity was innocent at first, but it stayed with her long enough that she eventually searched for him online. What she found was not what she had expected. Among the photographs that appeared was one of Musa standing beside a woman she immediately understood to be his new wife. And for a moment, she simply stared. A few strands of grey had appeared near his temples. The youthful sharpness of his features had softened slightly. Yet what struck her most was not how he looked. It was how he smiled. The expression possessed the same ease she remembered from years earlier. Standing beside him was a woman Azena assumed must be his wife. There was nothing especially remarkable about her appearance. She was attractive in the way many people are attractive, pleasant, warm, approachable. Yet something about her face suggested contentment. Not excitement, nor triumph, but contentment. The distinction mattered. Azena found herself studying the image longer than necessary. The woman stood close enough to Musa that their familiarity was unmistakable. Neither appeared to be performing happiness for the camera. They looked naturally comfortable together, like two people who genuinely enjoyed occupying the same space. After several moments, Azena closed the photograph. Yet the image followed her for days. What unsettled her was not jealousy. Jealousy would have been easier to understand. Instead, she felt something more complicated. She was witnessing the continuation of a story from which she had voluntarily removed herself. Life had not paused after her departure. The narrative had continued without her. There was something strangely humbling about that realization. Many people secretly imagine themselves as central characters in the lives they leave behind. Even when they know better intellectually, some part of them expects the past to remain suspended, waiting for acknowledgement. Reality rarely cooperates. People heal, they adapt and build new routines. New memories emerge. Eventually, the spaces once occupied by old relationships become inhabited by different experiences. Musa, it seemed, had done exactly that. The awareness should have brought her peace. Instead, it created an ache she struggled to name. Over the following year, fragments of information continued reaching her through indirect channels. Nothing significant, just merely the sort of details that circulate naturally among overlapping social circles. Musa and his wife had taken a short trip to the coast. They were renovating part of their home. They hosted family gatherings regularly. Someone mentioned how welcoming his wife was. Someone else remarked that Musa seemed happier than ever. Each detail appeared harmless in isolation. Together, however, they gradually assembled a picture. The image that emerged surprised her. For years, whenever she had imagined Musa's future, she unconsciously pictured a life largely similar to the one they once shared. The same limitations, routines, and modest ambitions. Instead, what she discovered was something different. Musa's life had continued growing. Not dramatically or spectacularly, but steadily. The small apartment had eventually given way to a comfortable house. His career had advanced, and financial pressures that once felt significant appeared far less burdensome now. He and his wife traveled occasionally, entertained friends, and enjoyed a quality of life that, while nowhere near Sultan's world, seemed undeniably pleasant. Azena would confirm all these during an evening gathering from someone who knew the couple well. The conversation began innocently enough. At some point, Musa's name surfaced. The woman smiled immediately. "They're lovely together," she said. Azena felt something tighten quietly inside her chest. The woman continued speaking, not excessively, but without realizing the effect her words carried. She described how naturally the two seemed to fit together, how often they laughed, and how welcoming their home felt. How Musa's wife always appeared genuinely interested in people, rather than merely polite. Then she said something that lingered long after the conversation ended. "They seem grateful for their life." Yes, grateful. Such a simple word, yet it followed Azena all the way home. That night, unable to sleep, she sat alone on her balcony overlooking the city. Below her stretched a landscape of lights and distant movement. Behind her stood a home many people would have considered the realization of every reasonable dream. Yet her thoughts remained elsewhere. For the first time, she allowed herself to examine a possibility she had avoided for years. What if Musa had not been standing still when she left? What if she had mistaken a chapter for the entire book? The idea unsettled her. When she divorced him, she had not believed she was walking away from anything of lasting value. She had believed she was choosing between different kinds of abundance, one that announced itself clearly and one that asked to be looked at more carefully. The first had seemed obvious. The second had seemed insufficient. Now she was no longer certain the distinction had ever been as clear as she once imagined. Perhaps what Musa had offered was never limited in the ways she had measured it. Perhaps presence, the kind that shows up without being asked, that notices without being told, that stays without requiring a reason. Perhaps that was its own form of wealth, one that did not appear in any inventory she had thought to take at the time. She had spent years inside a life of genuine abundance, and she did not regret what it had given her. Access to the world's finer things was not, in itself, a small matter. But sitting with everything she had accumulated, she was beginning to understand that unlimited access was a beginning, not a destination. A person could possess every resource available to them and still find themselves impoverished in the ways that mattered most at the end of a quiet evening. Fulfillment, she was slowly learning, did not live in what was accessible. It lived in what was present. Of course, there was no way to know what the years with Musa would have built. The difficulty with unlived lives is that they cannot be tested. They exist forever beyond reach, preserved in the clean, forgiving light of speculation. Gradually, almost without noticing it, Azena's attention shifted away from the question that had dominated her earlier years. She no longer asked whether Sultan had given her everything he promised, because he surely had. That question was settled. Instead, she found herself asking something far more painful. Had she fully understood what Musa was offering before she decided it wasn't enough? The answer remained frustratingly elusive, but each passing year seemed to move it in a direction she liked less and less. Memory has a particular cruelty that announces itself only gradually. It does not return the past as it was. It returns it as it is now understood, which is an entirely different thing. For Azena, that understanding had been arriving slowly, the way most important realizations do. Not in a single moment of clarity, but through the quiet accumulation of experience and time. What had once seemed insignificant, presence, attentiveness, the particular weight of being truly known, had begun to reveal itself as something she had no precise word for, only a growing recognition that she had once held it without knowing what she was holding. Of late, those memories had been returning more frequently. Small moments, arriving without any obvious trigger. Not anniversaries or major milestones, the opposite. Fragments so ordinary they should have disappeared years ago. The way Musa used to pause in the middle of reading an article just to share an interesting sentence with her. The way he could identify her mood from the sound of her footsteps moving through a room. The way he always noticed when she was tired before she admitted it to herself. They were memories now, nothing more. But in their accumulation, they had become something instructive. Life, as Azena had come to understand it, rarely delivers everything a person believes they are owed. It asks, instead, for a different kind of attention. The ability to recognize what is genuinely valuable before the moment of recognizing it has passed. A person who cannot do that will spend their years in pursuit of things that ultimately offer very little, while releasing, without ceremony, the things that mattered most. What made this difficult was that life rarely presents itself simply, and neither do the relationships built within it. Marriage, Azena had slowly come to understand, was not measured entirely through provision, generosity, or affection. It was also measured through accumulation. The ordinary moments shared across years, the conversations that occurred for no particular reason, the silences that felt comfortable rather than empty, the countless opportunities two people had to witness one another's lives while those lives were quietly unfolding. Sultan loved her. Of that she remained certain. But his life existed on a scale that constantly competed for his attention. There were always new demands, new responsibilities, new urgencies. The world seemed perpetually determined to borrow pieces of him. Musa, by contrast, had always arrived home carrying himself intact. Both paths were ones that life could offer. Azena had walked one and then the other. What she understood now, with the clarity that only time and experience can produce, was that the more important question had never been which path offered more. It had been which she could inhabit fully, with honest expectations, and without the quiet resentment of someone who believes they deserve better than what they chose. The truth, however, was more complicated than that. But above it all, the fact remains that life rarely grants all that a person desires. She wanted the intimacy they had built without surrendering the life she had chosen afterward. She wanted both outcomes, which was impossible. Most meaningful choices often close doors, and that is precisely what makes them meaningful. For years she had imagined regret as a bridge leading backward, a route home. Now she understood that regret rarely functions that way. It teaches, clarifies, and reveals, but it does not restore.